Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to HR Voices podcast. I'm your host, Mary Asante, and with me here today, I've got the fantastic Gary Jones from Grow Radio. Hi, Gary.
Hey, Mary. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I am really excited.
Excellent. So for those of you who may not know, Gary actually helps HR Voices with the editing of our podcast. So you've met or you are meeting one of our team members behind the scenes today. And I'm really excited about the topic because we'll be discussing how you can use podcasts as a tool to either develop, build, or grow your business. And who better to speak to than our very own expert, Gary. So thank you for joining me today, Gary.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And as you said, I've edited and listened to every single episode that you've produced. So you've had some absolutely great guests. So I'm honoured to be here. Really am.
Excellent. And for the, I think, benefits of our audience, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Gary Jones. My full name's Gary Jones, and I run a company called Grow Radio. And what effectively Grow Radio does, it helps people promote their messages through podcasting. Now, we do various courses that are available for if people want to learn online. We do webinars, but the main things I do is help businesses and community groups and charities with editing their own podcasts. Basically, most people just want to jump on a call like this, have a chat with someone, be a bit nosy and understand and ask questions and give value to their audiences. But then actually they don't want to do the technical stuff. And that's where I come in because I like the technical stuff. I like putting the video together. I like putting the audio together. And I like doing all that kind of stuff. So basically I just make it simple for people to share their messages. That's and also, to be fair, I'm nosy. So I love listening to the episodes before they go out. That's also a good benefit.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary, for telling us about yourself. And I can actually vouch for the fact that you do an amazing job with the editing and also keeping us on our toes to make sure that each episode goes out as is and when it's supposed to go out. So yeah, thank you for all that hard work. And I think for the purposes of today's discussion, what I'm hoping to explore with you is really what is podcasting? Mainly because it's changed over its inception, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's gone through a bit of an evolution. It has, but effectively, when it first started, it was purely just an audio file which you could download or stream. That's the definition of a podcast. So you could literally listen to it on your phone, on a computer, and there was only a few out there right at the start. Nowadays, the term podcasting can be anything from an audio file to a video. It could be for an interview. It could be whatever it is. But the idea is still fundamentally the same. A podcast itself can be any type of format, but the true podcast is an audio file which you can listen to on places like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, to name three in the UK, which are massive. But also it can include a video element as well, because we all know that we're engaged by video. We all watch stuff at the same time. And with a video element to it, technically it's not true podcasting, but it's an extension of podcasting. And also the same extension of podcasting is with the rise of social media. You've now got social media little clips that you can get from the podcast. So you can repurpose a podcast in loads of different ways. And in my mind, the video element is just a repurposing of that content, which makes complete sense. You've spent your time having this chat, spent this time kind of editing it and preparing for it. you might as well use it in as many places as you can. So you might as well use the video element to put it onto YouTube and to make smaller clips to it. You might as well use a transcript to make a blog and send it out your newsletter and all that kind of stuff. And you might as well use the audio and put it onto the platforms. For me, it's just a good use of time. But fundamentally, or podcast, you can just change the word podcast to recorded conversations if you want. It's literally just conveying a bit of messaging, but it has evolved from when it first started. But I suppose that's what all marketing kind of platforms do, don't they? All messages do. They evolve over time.
Absolutely. And there's also the accessibility element of using video and transcripts and stuff as well, because not everyone can potentially easily access the audio content that you put out there. So I think using the video, using transcripts, using short scripts and whatever you can do potentially increases the breadth of the audience and improves accessibility for our audience as well. So thank you for that. And now we would look at some of the benefits of using a podcast as a tool. Because for some of our listeners who may be running their HR consultancy, when you are running a business or an SME, when you're running a business, you're very, very stretched, isn't it? And you don't have that much time. Why would you dedicate a set time to record content every time? And it's just one of the ways that you can showcase your business and your content. It's not the fact that, okay, I've done podcasting and that's it. I don't have to do any more marketing. You still need to do your social media posting. You should need to do blogging. You still need to send emails out to customers and all those sort of things, plus go out networking and doing a whole host of things. So why would I, as a consultant business owner or as a small business owner, invest in podcasting?
So you've hit the nail on the head. Everyone is time stretched. We're all busy. We've all got 10 different things going on in our heads at the same time as doing that one thing that we're actually doing at the moment. So you're dead right on all of that. And that's where if you have podcasting if you have your own podcast, for instance, which is the most time extensive way of getting into podcasting, it's not the only way of getting into podcasting. There's other ways you can get involved with podcasting rather than just have your own podcast. But if you're talking about having your own podcast, you've got to make sure that podcast fits into your business and your marketing. It's center of everything you do. So therefore, the emails that you get sent out have got a podcast slant to it because they're telling people about what's on the podcast. Your social media provides value based on the pod and uses the podcast as the tool to be able to convey that messaging. You put this podcast right at the center of it. If it's just something else that you're doing, you know as well as I do, when times get tough in terms of energy or time, those little things that just on top, they get scrapped straight away. But if a podcast is right in the center of it, then actually it doesn't get scrapped. And what it does is that it gives you a chance to speak to your audience for a lot longer with a lot more authority and a lot more trust than you would do on social media. You know, the average person in the UK listens to about 20 to 25 minutes worth of podcasting in one go. Some people listen to more, some people listen to less. But that's 20 odd minutes of you listening, of that person listening to you and maybe someone else talking. You'd never get that on social media. You get 30 seconds, you might get 3 seconds maximum on socials if you're scrolling up and down. 20 minutes is a long time. And in that 20 minutes, that person will give you their trust and they'll listen to your content. As a guest on the podcast, that's a great honor to be part of that. But also as a host, you are putting yourself above most other people who haven't got a podcast. So therefore your visibility straight away in your industry rises up straight away. And your authority, because you are the host, you're bringing these people on, your authority goes up as well. So there's loads of benefits to it as well as visibility, trust, audience building. It's a great networking tool as well. You can use kind of your guest appearances or getting guests onto your shows as a networking opportunity. But really it's a community builder. And that's where I want to do it. And that's where placing it right in the center of your marketing really helps, because ultimately a podcast has got to do three things for you. It's got to give value to you. So you've got to get some kind of it yourself as Mary. It's got to give you business or something. So HR independents need to get some out of it. And your audience, your community has to get some out of it. And most podcasters, if they don't have a fully formed plan, it doesn't really work. But that's why putting it in the center is so important. It really is. It is, because otherwise, you're right, you're not going to do it. But as I said, it's only launching your podcast is only one way of getting involved in it. Another way that's less time extensive than having your own podcast is being a guest on a podcast, because you can share your stories, you can share your experiences, your insights, your updates from what's happening in your industry with that potential kind of audience. It's a great networking tool as well, because you're being focused and showcased to a brand new audience, and you're talking about stuff that you talk about every day. It's a win-win. It's an absolute win-win. So for anyone who's looking to dip their toe in, try being a guest on a podcast before having your own show, because having your own show does take a lot of time and energy.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think it's really interesting, because the next question I was going to explore with you is, if you set up a podcast and you start running your own podcast, do you need to have guests on your podcast?
No. And a lot of people actually have a mix of solo shows and guest shows, because we all know that with, actually some people might not know, but if you just purely have an interview based show, which to be fair is probably 9 out of 10 different of the podcasts out there have an interview based show where you got one person like yourself interviewing someone like me who's a guest. That's sometimes a bit tricky to organise. You've got to make sure that your calendars link up. You've got to make sure you've both got the right time. You've both got the prep, and then there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Solo shows, you don't have to worry about any of that. All you have to do is have a plan, and then you can go to record. And some people like converting stuff that they've already got, so maybe have blogs or have webinars that they just repurpose. Fine, that's all good. Some people listen to what their audience is saying and asking those and answering those questions. That's great as well. The main thing is having a mix and having a strategy. If you've got your own podcast, that you can have the flexibility to do both. So if the guest doesn't turn up, you've got a backup plan, which could be a solo show. But if you already fit in those solo shows into your strategy, you can always fit the guests around it. It's a subtle shift, but it means that you're in control of it. But I would say that it's good to mix things up. If we're doing the same thing over and over again, it might get a bit stagnant over time. So mixing it up, doing a few kind of solo shows, do a few recap shows, even pushing them forward, do a few live shows. There's always stuff you can do to mix it up. But yeah, I wouldn't just rely on that one format. I think if you do, I wouldn't say you're creating work for yourself, but there's other options that you should be exploring.
I think that's also the other side of the objective, isn't it? What you set out to do in the first place. Because yes, you are right. Most podcasters have guests on their shows. Some have a single guest at a time. Others have multiple guests come together at the same time, and so on and so forth. But some also run very good podcast without guests. And I have seen where that probably work quite well is where there are potentially two hosts discussing a topic as well. So that there's no right or wrong way of doing it. There is what works for you and the audience, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you think of the dynamic of you doing it, we're having a chat. That's basically what we're doing. I can see you, you can see me, and we're having a chat. The co-host works really well because that's, again, two people having a chat. If you bring a third person in as a guest, great. You got three voices now suddenly all having a chat. And that's what podcasting for me should feel like. It should feel like you are listening just to a couple of people having a chat. And in a normal conversation, you wouldn't just have one person doing all the talking, one person answering. it will be a back and forth. So I think the more voices you've got, great. And I think having a co-host definitely works. But also then having that flexibility to say, well, actually, yeah, let's bring a co-host in for a limited time. I know some shows who have monthly, well, a number of different formats, but let's say they've got a monthly format, so they have monthly structure and a monthly theme in their marketing. They'll do one solo show to kick things off, so the audience knows their particular take. Then they might have a panel discussion to get a broad idea of what their industry is all about. There may be an interview or so, or maybe one or two interviews, and then a final solo show to round it off. And then that will complete that particular month's theme. So that's just one way of making sure the structure stays varied, but also you can prepare for it and you can organise it. But having a co-host is absolutely great. If you get the right co-host, that's so good.
It's really interesting in terms of, I mean, you've used the mix things up a bit to keep it interesting, exciting, etc. But how does that weigh against having a consistent format on your show so that your audience know what to expect?
But it is a consistent format if you do it all the same. If you do it all the time, it is a consistent format. It's just what a consistent format is just what the audience is used to at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if they're used to interview. Great, that's what you should do. But some people like a bit of varied, so therefore, if they start a podcast or you start a new season, and you have maybe a week or two break and start a new season, then you change the format, then that becomes their new norm.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're both.
That is true. I suppose it's what you do, isn't it, and how you do it, and then your audience get used to it. If they know that, okay, if I'm listening to HR voices today, Mary might be speaking to a guest. Tomorrow she may be doing a recap, or on the next day she might well just be doing thought leadership or something like that on a topic which is pertinent. Then they get used to, okay, this is what we get when we tune into HR voices, and so that
the lovely thing that you've done, sorry to cut in, is that you did right from the start. You did recap episodes, so you did a bunch of 4 or 5 episodes, and then you do a recap on the previous ones. And for me, that's a great way of breaking up your content and almost adding in a solo show, because at that time you had Charlotte as your co-host. Now you're doing it yourself. That is your solo show. Is the recap. Yeah. So you are effectively mixing the genre, mixing the formats just by doing that recap show. But that's a great jumping on point for anyone joining in. Again, you started that right from the start. So your audience knows that you're going to have a recap show every 4 to 6 episodes.
Yeah. And then the recap, I think, from our point of view, is extremely good. Not just a way of breaking the show, but also bringing the great episodes that we pulled together to the audience, who again might not necessarily have the time to sit through every single episode, but listening to the recap, if something really piques their interest, they may just hone in on that one, and that they may just listen to that or take their time to go by it, but they get the essence of the 5 to 7 or so episodes that we've just done within a short space of time. It effectively summarizes, isn't it? And in addition to the summary, we'll also add our thoughts on the topics that has been discussed as well. So you get, okay, I spoke to Gary today, really interested. And from that discussion, what I picked on is when you're doing podcast X, Y, Z and the rest of it. So share my view effectively on the episodes as well, which I think works really well.
Yeah, it does. And if you think of the 3 value bits that I mentioned, so giving value to you, business, and that, it's a win in every single box, because for the community, they get a chance to recap, like you said. For the business, you get a chance to give value back. You give a bit of love to your previous guests. And for you, you actually get to experience those episodes again. So therefore, any learnings that you've missed out on, you remember. And we're all guilty of listening to a podcast and not doing anything with the information that we've learned. There's not a single person who, I doubt it very much, will write a note after every single podcast to say, I love this point, I'm going to do this point differently going forward after listening to the show. I don't think anyone does it. They probably should. And I know I should more because I've started doing it and it really works. If you write it down, if you listen to a podcast, you just say, actually, I'm going to do one thing after listening to this podcast. That's really good way of doing it.
I think
But not
that's
many people
a
do.
really interesting point and a very important thing, and probably an episode on its own. The one thing you would do when you listen to a podcast, that is also, I mean, a topic worth exploring itself, isn't it?
Definitely.
Because you have spent 25 minutes, half an hour, etc., listening to very interesting topic to you. And what are you taking out of it? Again, if we look at HR Voices podcast, we carefully curate our guests, we carefully curate the topics, etc., so that our audience will greatly benefit from the podcast. So yes, when you are here with us, listening to us, why not make the most out of it and make good points about what can help you? And more importantly, the one thing you're either going to do differently, the one thing that you are going to revisit, the one thing that you are going to do more of. It's not every single time that, oh, that one thing has to be a new thing, but it can be something that is really helpful to you and to your business and to your clients that you can do more of to ensure that, yes, you are benefiting from that time that you've invested, right?
And you're dead right. I think you said the key phrase, the time that you've invested. Because you have invested into that time, whether you were driving at the time or walking the dogs or listening to it as background noise in the office, you still invested your time into it. So you might as well get something from it.
Absolutely. And one of the key things important to HR consultants is client relationships, right? And bringing a value to our clients through that established relationship. I understand when it's easier to see the value when you're engaging with the clients every day, either through supporting them, checking in on them, and also emailing, phoning, and doing, or going to meet them face to face and the rest of that. How can you build engagement, consistent, continuous, and good client relationship through your podcast?
So if you've got your own podcast, you're in control of it all. So I'll talk about having your own podcast first and then being a guest on the podcast, because you can build relationships and gather those in both ways, but slightly differently. So when you've got your own podcast, you're in control of everything in terms of the content and the guests you come in. But that means also you can have multiple touch points and keep in touch with all those people. Now, every person you speak to in terms of your clients, your suppliers, they've all got stories and they've all got backgrounds which you can bring out, and your podcast can be a tool for them to do that. So through the just art of just having a chat with someone, you can find out loads of stuff about them, and you can really figure out, actually, that story you've said about the time when you've done this. Well, obviously you can't say anybody's names or experiences and all that kind of stuff, but you can give vague generations. So as in, I worked with a company a couple of years ago, and instead of mentioning names and stuff, but that story that they mentioned would make a great topic on a podcast. I've got one that talks about these. Would you be happy going on to it? Straight away, that person's going to feel flattered to say, really? You sure that story's good enough to be on your podcast? Or if they're like that, or they'll go, yeah, I'm down with that. But it's just, first of all, listening and hearing their stories and then working out actually what stories would work for you. Use that as a starting point. And then from there, just build and keep that relationship. There's networking and ways to give value to your people at every stage. It's not just when the podcast's been released. We can give value right here, right now. You know, when before this call, we had a chat where we discussed a few ideas about what we were going to talk about. At this point in time, I could then say to you during this or afterwards, have you got a podcast community that I can have a chat with, and we can use this as a starting point potentially? So as a host, you can say, well, actually, we've got this community where, you know, we would love you to do a quick video about this point, or if they've got any questions, can they link up with you so we can have a chat? There's network opportunities all the way around it. There is. But the main thing is really is, for me, is knowing that everybody's got their own story. And it's just about you picking those bits out and then showcasing that on your podcast. Now, if you've got a guest, if you're a guest on someone else's podcast, obviously you're not in control of the questions you get asked. But as a guest, you should have the relevant information to be able to say to them and be able to think on your feet about what you're going to say next. You might want to have a few stories available to you. So if someone says, how did you get into podcasting or all that, you've got a story that you can shout out the bat. If you're being a guest on the podcast also, it's really important. I'm going to go back to it. Listen to a few episodes beforehand. Listening again is so important if you're going to be a guest, because you can really understand what the show's all about. You know, the host, do you talk fast? Do you talk slow? Do you ask deep questions? Do you ask really short fire questions? You can find all of those bits out beforehand. So when you go onto the show, you can make sure your messaging is on point for that show. I had a cheat way today because I've listened to all the shows. So I know your style of interviewing. I know that you love to go with the flow in terms of the conversations and the questions. That means for me, I need to have a few kind of things in the back of my mind all ready to go to make sure that I've got the information for you, which is great.
Excellent. And I think you've touched on a very valuable point, I think, for me as a host, which is really listening to a few episodes before, or watching a few episodes before you actually go on someone's show as a guest. And it gives you a feel of how the podcast is, what they talk about, their style, etc. And you touch on a really important point, because for me, it's quite important that HR voices is conversational. And the key point is that if you're having a conversation with somebody, one of the essential skills is listening. That is a very essential skill. And so having a set of questions that you just want to rattle through, whilst that is all good and well and good in an interviewing situation sometimes, etc., you miss key and important things that your guest is saying if you are too focused on, oh God, I'm on question number 3 and we're almost at the end of it, and I really need to get to question number 10 before we finish, and you're rushing through, and you're sometimes not even coherent, because hang on a minute, you just talked about this, how did that jump from there to here? And your audience can sometimes become a little bit confused. But if you're having a deeper, meaningful conversation, then it's really flowing. It doesn't really matter as a host if I don't go through all the questions all the key points, as long as I've gone through something that I think is going to be meaningful, valuable, and right for the audience. I think that's more important.
Definitely. No one knows what you're going to ask next. So, frankly, you can ask whatever question you want and we will listen and I will react to it. But one thing that you hit upon just then was the fact that you wouldn't jump from question 3 to question 10 without being coherent. You probably wouldn't do that in a HR interview, in a disciplinary or anything like that. So why change your approach to listening just because you're changing the arena that you're in? In a HR disciplinary meeting, please correct me if wrong, because luckily, touch wood, I haven't been in many, or if any. But you know,
it's not the storytelling aspect about disciplinaries.
But you would be listening. You'd be watching their body motion, language. You'd be making notes as well. But equally, you'd probably spend most of your time just sitting back listening and actually looking out for those cues to show actually this is actually what you're saying. So why would you not do that on a podcast interview? You might as well use the strengths that you've got in this arena rather than just not being yourself and just being someone else just for the sake of it. There's no point.
And actually talking about being yourself will lead nicely to the next aspect, which is I believe if you can use podcasts as a tool to really show your clients the human side to your consultancy, right?
Oh, definitely. It's, as I said before, right at the start, people spend time, they invest their time in listening to you. They listen to you as a person. not as a HR representative. I listen to you as Mary.
Mm.
Obviously, your experiences make who you are. Your background makes who you are, but you're you.
Yeah.
And if you try to change the way you speak or the language you use or the words that you use to fit into the narrative that you think you're doing, and the people who are listening, I'm using bunny ears to stress that it's a quote. Do you know what? You don't need to. You just be you. I could easily turn up to this interview or chat or whatever you want to call it in a shirt and tie. I
Mm.
would feel as uncomfortable as hell wearing that shirt and tie. Do you think I'd be as relaxed as I am now talking to you if I was wearing a shirt and tie? I wouldn't. If I used fancy
That's not
language,
your style.
yeah, if I used fancy language, do you think actually I would get my message over to you better? No, because it's not me. It's not me. So I do try to be as natural as possible. That also gives you the benefit of when you meet people in person, they already know you and they know you as you, not as your online persona.
Mm.
So podcasting is a great tool to do that. And if you've got your own podcast and people listen in, they listen to you, Mary, as a person, and they trust you.
Yeah.
There's a level of trust because I'm spending my time listening to you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a great way of building trust with your audience.
So there's the aspect, this is the this is Mary, your authenticity aspect of it. I mean, you touch on persona. If you are presenting a persona that's not you, and like you said, somebody meets you in person or in another forum online or elsewhere, they'll go, huh, that's very interesting. That wasn't what I was expecting. Might
Yep.
be what you might get back. And then that there is, go on, Gary.
I was going to say, sorry to cut in. We're in the age at the moment with AI where you can get AI images, and I've just random thing, a big bugbear with AI images of people not showing them in the right light. In terms of, I'm not talking about photoshopping or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is actually meeting a person and realizing actually you don't look anything like the pictures I've been seeing on your social media for the last 6 months because they're all AI generated, and your house doesn't look like that because you've got a immaculate kitchen at the back, and actually it's just like everyone else's house. It's just a mess most of the time and clean up. Whatever it is, I've got a bugbear with AI images at the moment, and you just hit on a point that, yeah, sorry, I've gone off
I
a bit
think
of a
that
tangent,
again
but it
is
is
a whole
a
topic
wrap.
on its own. The use and generation of AI images, when to use them and when not to use them, etc. And it is quite interesting because I had a chat not long ago with somebody around the images, and they were really upset is a strong word, but they were quite crossed by someone else's image that they've generated, making them look about 20 years younger. And I was like, maybe it makes them feel better. There is a whole host of discussion around that, and actually maybe a topic for another day to explore images
Completely.
and what it conveys and stuff like
Completely.
that.
Use of AI in HR would be a massive topic to do, and I don't even think that would be just a single episode. I think that would be a whole theme, wouldn't it? Really, it would, because
Absolutely.
it is huge. That's all the way down from recruitment to ChatGTP, writing interviews, question right answers, and all that kind of stuff, all the way through to what we just said with kind of the images as well. I'm not, I just want to finish off the AI conversation with I am all for AI. I'm an AI advocate. It's all good when it's used the right way, but I do believe if you trying to build a long term relationship with someone, you need to start on the right footing, and you need to start with you being you. I think that's fundamental for me. Luckily, podcasting does
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And I think the human aspect of what we do and the value that we bring as humans in the long run is going to be a valuable asset for all of us in what we do. AI or no AI, as a consultant, humans, your team, if you have one, at the center of what you do and at the forefront of everything you do is really important. AI is good and it's valuable, helping you work smarter and faster, etc. But showing the people you work with, your clients, you and the value and who they're working with, giving them a glimpse of who you are as a person is really important, because I mean, this phrase is underrated, overused, etc., but very true, which is people work with people and people work with people they like and trust, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and to be fair, AI is a great tool to, as you said, to work smarter and harder and quicker. And for podcasting, you can use it to shortcut a lot of processes. Taking the ums and ahs out used to take me hours. Now I can put it through a system and it does it within seconds. It does transform the experience and makes it a lot easier. However, you need to know how to use it, because if it's not regulated or you use it too far, and sometimes the AI doesn't know what too far is because they're just doing a job that you programmed it to do. Actually, the results can be counterproductive, and actually it can make a worse podcast by using too much AI. And as I said before, the most natural podcasts are just two people having a chat. AI doesn't come into that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think interesting topic, and I think you and I can sit here and talk about it all day long. And as you've edited and listened to every single episode, you know that I love to end the podcast with top 3 tips for anyone listening to us or who has tuned in to really on how you can use a podcast as a tool to build, grow, and develop your business.
Great stuff. So tip number 1 is you can listen to podcasts regardless of what level you're at, and you can get something out of it. So if you just want to learn about a new topic, or you want to understand or just be entertained or just be taken out of your day-to-day bit, you can tune into a podcast to be able to do that. If you're looking to be a guest on a podcast, then actually it's a great way to listen back to previous episodes, research it, give that show some love on socials. You could get you a guest spot anyway. But again, being a guest is a great tool to be able to do that, and listening is the first step. And having your own podcast, if you listen to a podcast and you don't like something, you won't include it in your podcast. But equally, if you love something about that podcast, include it in yours. So my tip number 1 is to listen to podcasts and actively listen to podcasts. So you can take a few notes afterwards if you want to. Tip number 2 is launching your own podcast isn't the only way. Being a guest on a podcast is equally as effective, and it's a great way of you sharing your message. So try to get on to different people's podcasts if you can. And it's not just HR podcasts that you could probably go on to. Remember, you're a business owner, you're a community leader. So therefore you can go on to those particular podcasts that talk about building communities, about how you set up the business and all that stuff. There's loads of podcasts you can go on to, not just HR specific podcasts if you are a HR consultant. And thirdly, if you're going to launch your own podcast, focus on the idea, because you don't have to invest in loads of equipment to be able to do a podcast, but you do need to invest time in your idea to be really to make sure you are giving value to yourself, to the person listening, so your community, and also if it's business related podcast to that. So for me, it's those 3 tips. It's about listening, it's about being a guest on a podcast, and it's about having a clear idea if you're going to launch your own podcast.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gary. And thank you for sharing your insights and also for being with us today. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in, for listening to us, and for watching our podcast. If you've really enjoyed our discussion, please do share with your network and encourage more people to listen. If, as Gary said, you are interested in going on a show as a guest, please do get in touch with us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. That is hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Thank you, and speak to you again soon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.